Fortnite is making huge improvements to the anti-cheat, but is it good enough to get rid of cheaters so we can bring back tournaments like the Solo Victory Cup? We also have Peterbot and Pollo officially splitting up for a tournament. Is this for good? Why are they no longer playing together? And what is going on with the old new Storm Surge? Fortnite has changed Storm Surge yet again and said absolutely nothing about it. I got a lot to talk about. Let's jump into it. All right, let's kick off with the big news. Fortnite is improving their anti-cheat again. Now, there's always a lot of kind of confusion when it comes to the anti-cheat, and I think that's deliberate. Fortnite don't want everyone to understand how their anti-cheat works, because then you understand how to get around it. So their wording is a little bit vague here, and a lot of this is coming from Asarian, but this is definitely a stronger anti-cheat with Fortnite trying to crack down on cheaters. So first off, Asarian tweeted out more cheater prevention features. Epic is now working on a bunch of new comp security features along the IOMMU added 2 days ago. So kernel code integrity, stable OS version operating system, strict injection policy, strict virtualization policy, Android secure device, and iOS secure device, and minimum OS versions. Now, I don't know what half those words mean. I'm going to be so honest with you. I'm so sorry. I've done my best. I've tried to research this. I know kernel code integrity. I know a lot of anti-cheats, like Valorant anti-cheat is kernel level. Basically, it has insane access to your PC so it can try to detect when people are using cheating software or hardware. I've heard a lot of people come out from the cheating development side of things, and also a lot of PC experts and tweakers come out talking about this. And from what I've heard from people that I trust, this is a big change. This is going to make cheating much harder. Now, is it going to make cheating impossible? No, because there's almost no way to make cheating impossible. This is pretty much the never-ending battle between cheat developers and games trying to develop their cheats. It's basically, or their anti-cheat. It basically becomes the cheaters develop a new cheat, Fortnite or whoever the game is tries to make an anti-cheat to combat that cheat, then they make a better cheat, they find a way to stop that, and it keeps growing and growing. This should definitely help though. It's basically Fortnite making the anti-cheat even more insane, to the point where for some people, potentially even tweaks are going to become an issue. I talked about this live on stream, and again, a lot of people I trust more than me saying this is going to make a lot of the custom tweaks that Fortnite pros use quite difficult. I'm sure like the mainstream tweakers who people pay to access their PC and do stuff like this will also be able to find a way to do what they want to do, but this is a big step in the right direction, and hopefully a big step towards us getting tournaments back that we want. I know a lot of you guys want Solo Victory Cups back. I obviously much prefer Solo Victory Cups over the existing Solo Cash Cup format. I think almost everyone would, but as we've accepted, this is pretty much a necessary evil. But a huge new anti-cheat update that's going to make it apparently specifically more difficult for DMAs. DMAs is one of the main issues with Fortnite right now when it comes to cheating. Again, basic rundown of a DMA. I am no expert, but I've talked to experts about it. Essentially, you're pretty much running the cheats on another mini PC that's running inside your PC. That's the most basic way to make that make sense, and apparently these changes are going to make that a lot more difficult. Some cheat developers coming out and saying this basically completely ruins the cheats they're currently selling. So fingers crossed that is the case. If anyone has any better understanding than me when it comes to how these anti-cheats work, or can kind of break down what some of these words mean, let us know in the comments down below. I'll pin your message, but I did want to let people know Fortnite 100% is trying to make their anti-cheat even more crazy. So hopefully Chapter 7 has some insane tournaments. Next up, again, this is also courtesy of Osirian. We have Fortnite testing the new surge again. So we're testing the old new surge, basically the net damage surge. Damage done minus damage taken from players. We tested this a few weeks ago. It was a bit of a failure. Pretty much everyone predicted it was going to fail, but one of the main reasons it fails, it turned out, is, like I said in my video originally, it just didn't work. Not like, you know, it doesn't make sense. It actually physically didn't work. Sometimes players were dealing damage and they weren't gaining any damage. Sometimes they were taking damage. It wasn't changing. It was all broken. So Fortnite fixed that and they turned it on today in the Eval Cup. Now, unfortunately, unless you follow Asarian on Twitter, you didn't know this because Fortnite didn't announce it or talk about it anywhere. They just turned it on. Asarian realized, tweeted out, and that's how we knew. Now, how did it go? It wasn't great. It was better than last time because it did actually work this time, but for the most part, it had all the issues we thought it would have. Again, it pretty much just rewarded teams not fighting at all. You just sat in a box the entire game once you got a little bit of damage, played the end game, and then went on to do well. Now, I will admit that is because this is a Victory Cup format. In Opens, it's kind of like whatever. Elim's only worth 1 point. I didn't really get to see how it play out in Opens, but in Finals at least, you only get money for the win. So there was literally no reason to fight in this tournament. I feel like if Fortnite really wants to test this new surge, they need to put it into a tournament where elims are worth something and then see how it goes. Because when you only get money for winning, teams are already incentivized to not fight. And then you add a storm surge where basically it's worse if you fight. Teams are literally just going to sit in boxes. Watching the NA finals, unfortunately, was one of the most boring tournaments I've ever watched. That's saying a lot. I've been watching this game for almost 7 years now. It is also off season. These tournaments don't really matter, which is definitely going to impact things. So I don't want to say Fortnite's completely failed with this Storm Surge. It has its issues, but it could be worked on. Maybe a meta where there's a lot of mid-game objectives, maybe like caches and islands and reasons to fight. You know, they add a few things in there like snipers to try to, you know, take people out so that makes more mid-game fighting. Things like that. It could maybe work in a world, or it definitely gets rid of trading at least. But I feel like Fortnite's attempt to try to test it in a meta where you already don't fight doesn't make a lot of sense. But at least as far as I could see, it actually works properly. When players did damage, it went up, and when they took damage, it went down. So that was an improvement at least. In case you missed the original explanation, it's very simple. It is just that. So it's damage done minus damage taken from players, and that's your surge. So if you deal 500 damage and you take 300, you are positive 200 net damage when it comes to surge. Now, if you look at the stats on EU, you just need it to be not negative to make it through the first 2 ratios of surge. So here on zone 6, all you had to do was not be below negative 268 damage. So if you done 0 damage and only taken 250, you were still above surge. You were negative, but you weren't the most negative, if that makes sense. And then zone 7 was negative 157. It was only zone 8 when you had to have done some kind of damage. You had to be positive 41. Zone 9 went down to positive 10. And then zone 10 went down to negative 15. So as long as you'd done less than negative 15, you were fine. And as you can see, that's going to be an issue. That's basically meaning you literally have to hit 1 AR tag or 2 to make it through the entire game as long as you take no damage. But once you got over to NA, I'm guessing on EU, because a lot of pros didn't even know it was on because the tweet only just went out. If you look over on NA, the values weren't that different, but they were a little bit different. So zone 7 was negative 294 damage. Zone 8 was negative 26. Zone 9 was negative 188. And then zone 10 was positive 165. So if you wanted to make it through all aspects of surge in the NA finals, to get to the last zone of surge, zone 10, you did have to do at least 165 positive damage. But across the board, if you look at the stats and you look at the way the tournament played out, I definitely wouldn't say it was a success, but it wasn't as much of a failure as last time. Now, is this surge going to be on in the regular tournaments? I don't know. Fortnite hasn't said anything, but I'm guessing it's not going to be on in the Div Cups. I think this was just for the Eval Cup, but this was the last Eval Cup of the season, so I don't know if we're ever going to see this come back or if Fortnite will just scrap it. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Now, despite the surge being a little bit goofy, let's talk about the Eval Cup finals. Before we get to finals, we got to talk about what's going on with Pete and Pollo. They've been on a pretty terrible spree right now. They both talked about how they're burnt out on the game. A lot of people saying that they're not trying. A lot of the haters saying they are trying. They just suck now. Well, Peterbot and Pollo have actually split up for the Eval Cup this week. Pete ended up playing with Rise and Pollo ended up playing with Skittles. Now, Pollo and Skittles came off to a great start. They ended up being 2nd place after their first game, behind Peterbot and Rise. Peterbot and Rise, however, went on to play phenomenal. They actually came 1st place in the opens and qualifying to the finals. Unfortunately, Pollo and Skittles didn't end up making the finals. They ended on like around 150 points, so they were 1 good game short. Unfortunately, Pete and Rise didn't find the same success in finals. They almost did. They got a 3 Elim 5th and a 2 Elim 7th, along with a 0 Elim 36th and a 3 Elim 14. So they didn't get a win in the finals, but they at least made it. So what does this mean for Pete and Pollo? Well, I think it's just like they've been talking about. They're just burnt out on the game right now. I don't think they hate each other or they don't want to play anymore. I think it's just a way to kind of refresh the vibes, go play with someone else, joke around, don't take it too serious. And I think it also kind of gets the community off Pete and Pollo's back. Like, Pete was literally playing on controller during the opens and kids were still flaming him for not qualifying. So I think his logic is, hey, I'm just going to play with someone else because then you can't say that I'm taking it serious. If I'm just playing with friends and having fun, then I'm clearly not locked in and no one's going to flame the placements. I don't know if Pete even cares about the community's opinion that much. That's just me guessing from the outside looking in. Maybe Pete just woke up and said, hey, it's the last Eval Cup of the season. Who cares? I'm just going to play with someone else. Played with Rise and they did well. The other ulterior motive here and the other kind of, me kind of thinking between the lines here, this could also be Pete's attempt to try to play under a more conventional IGL. Rise is pretty much the most IGL of IGLs. We know that Rise's fighting is not super crazy, despite the fact game 1 of opens, my man did drop almost 15 kills. It was kind of popping off. But for the most part, Rise plays very, very safe, methodical Fortnite with almost no fighting and is an absolute expert at rotating. The one thing a lot of people say that Peterbot's IGLing is struggling with right now. So there is a chance that Pete is also trying to play with Rise to try to learn this a little bit. I don't know if there's going to be crash pads next season. I mean, it's going to be the Simpsons season. It's going to be like friggin' we're going to be drinking like Duff beer and popping purple donuts. I don't know. I don't know what's going to be in. but I don't think it's going to be Crash Pad. So either way, Pete might just be trying to learn a little bit from Rise, or he's trying to have some fun until Pete says something. We're only just guessing, but for the most part, it backs up the statement he's been making where he is definitely not locked in right now and doesn't really care about the tournaments. Is Pete going to play with Pollo for the Div Cup? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Let's see who actually did do well in this finals. And despite the Storm Surge not being the greatest, the 4 teams that won were very solid teams. We had TK and Higher, who managed to get an 8 elim win in game 4 and a 9 elim third in game 3. TK coming off the back of winning solos this week, looking very, very solid. Then we had Ritual and Cold, who got a 7 elim win in game 2. We had Cooper Sphinx, who got an 11 elim win and a 4 elim 6th. And then Ark and Kanata, who got a 4 elim first, a 2 elim 8th as well. So very good games for them. We were missing a few big teams that didn't get a win. Aegis and Yomzo played phenomenally, but just couldn't get the victory out. 7 elim third, 6 elim 5th, 9 elim 2nd, and a 2 elim 6th. Having an average placement of 4th in 4 games of finals and not getting a single win is brutal. We had Acorn Bolts, similar story, 17th, 10th, but then a 5th and 2nd. We also got Clicks and Higgs getting a 10 elim 2nd themselves as well, so they didn't also get a win. So a lot of big teams did really well with this new surge, but I feel like that's just a factor of the best teams are going to get uncontested solid POIs, especially near mid-map. They get a couple tags, they base up, and then it's just whoever can play the better end game, which all these guys know how to do. So I don't think it's the greatest indicator of this new surge being really good that the good teams did well. I think it's just a factor of they have the best POIs and know how to play endgame. The same goes for EU. If you look who got the wins on EU with some of our best teams, Shark and Teeny got a 10 elim win as well as a 5 elim third. Strapped and Jewel, who you might not be focusing on too much, but I think this is their 3rd or 4th Eval Cup win this season. They got a 13 elim win. Vico and Malabuka, one of our brand new duos who came out firing, looking really solid. They got a 7 elim 5th and a 6 elim win as well. And then Chino and Veno, who got a 3 elim 2nd and a 7 elim win. So Chino, Veno looking very solid. Wox and Pixie, despite contesting Fredoxy, actually managed to get a 6 elim 2nd and 8 elim 6th. We had Chap and Vidil, who got 4 21st in a row. So insane consistency for them, but unfortunately at the wrong end of the leaderboard. It is worth mentioning the first 2 games of EU did bug and they had to extend the tournament. So by the end, a lot of the pros were very, very tilted. But for the most part, I didn't really get too many of the EU players' opinions on the surge, but I don't think they were the biggest fans based on the yelling I was hearing, not in English. As for the EU pros as well, make sure you guys check Fortnite Tracker or Asarian to know when tournaments are starting this week. The Div Cups have been moved. The Div Cup Day 2 and Finals have been moved because Fortnite is allowing the E-Razor solo finals to take place on the same day when Finals normally does. So $100,000 solo land is taking place this Saturday. I will be watching it live on my Twitch channel. If you want to swing by, it's going to be a good time. But they've now moved the Div Cup Day 2 and Finals to next week to let the pros play both of them, which I think is a huge W from Epic, but it might mess you guys up, so make sure you check out the schedule. I also have a lot of you guys asking for my predictions on the solo series finals. I'm going to make that a separate video and also talk about all the new leaks that just came out about the Simpsons mini season, but I just got back from my trip to TwitchCon. I want to make this video and I'm going to work on all of that over the next couple days to make it a banger video, I promise.